We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. We got a good one coming up right here. Hey, fall camp starting this week, so I wanted to take a look at areas I want to see the Gators improve. And we've done that kind of on the heels of last season, but doing some more digging, doing some more preview type of things. And I was like, hey, this is where I want the Gators to be better this year. So we'll extend that conversation from a long time ago, and then also start a Q&A segment heading into fall camp. That will last a couple of weeks. I opened up submissions on Twitter and have received some really good questions. So that will take us through fall camp. We'll kind of work it into this coming up week. We'll hear from a lot of the coaching staff, their sides of the ball, their positions. So I'll work some of the questions into that too, but we'll get started this episode. Some really, really good questions to get the Q&A started. So everybody on Twitter who submitted, I'll try and get to your questions, the ones I've gotten to already, but thank you to all of them. I've got plenty, believe me, got plenty that will probably last us through fall camp. So of course, that was the best way to do it. We've done it before with Gators Breakdown Plus members and all that, but opened it back up since we got about a month before the season. Lots of good topics I know you guys want to hear about. We'll get into it in kind of Q&A form here the next few weeks. So that'll be a whole lot of fun right here. But hey, hit that like button, subscribe, no matter what platform you listen to. Subscribe if you haven't done so yet. But if you're watching this on YouTube, smash that like button. Of course, if you want to keep the conversation going, join Gators Breakdown Plus. Keep the conversation going on Discord, all the chats we have there. So extra episodes that will be available in the fall that you can't find anywhere else. Right there, Gators Breakdown Plus. And also, hey, about a month until kickoff. Get your Beat Miami shirt, gatorsbreakdownmerch.com. New designs up there as well to get, to support us right here in what we're doing on Gators Breakdown. But of course, we want to show that support for beating those Miami Hurricanes. All right, let's get it started here. Let's start about the areas that I want to see the Gators improve this year. And a lot of it will look, we know the defense is the worst side of the ball here, but where the offense can help them, but also just in general as well. So the areas I want to get to are bad starts in games or, getting down big early. I'm mainly focusing on the losses here. Of course, you had the early season losses versus Utah and Kentucky, but then that late season skid, the 5-game losing streak to end the season, most of it will be focused there in the areas that I want to see the Gators improve. But bad starts, getting down early in games, but mainly looking at the losses here and also getting better in complementary football. And that's kind of where I'll focus on the offense and where they can help the defense. Look, we all know the offense, the much better side of the ball, but they can take a step. And when the defense does do something good, take advantage. That's the complementary football I'm going to go into right here. So take a look at the losses here. Remember I said down big. You were down big to 17-3 against Utah. And that offense wasn't really lighting it up. They had that big first play. Florida defense kind of settled down. The offense wasn't really able to come back around. Like I said, I'll mainly focus on that late 5-game season stretch where that was even more apparent. But that happened in the Utah game as well. Didn't happen much against Kentucky. Florida defense was just completely dominated right away. Down 16-0 after the first quarter, down 23-7 at halftime. You were never in that game. Kentucky is not that much better than Florida. That's where you kind of just throw your hands up in the air, surrender Cobra when you're watching Florida versus Kentucky. Shouldn't be that way. Kentucky's not going on and winning 9-10 games a year. They're pretty much kind of where you're at, and you just got your doors blasted by Kentucky there. You can't get you took yourself out of the game by that bad start. Now this one a little more easier to explain, but down 24-7 to Georgia. That was early in the second quarter, and that was after you had that opening drive touchdown. You had a lead in that game, and still in the second quarter, after starting 7-0. You found yourself down 24-7 a quarter later. Got to get that's kind of been the MO. Georgia gets up a big lead, and you find a way to scratch and claw back only before them to end the second half to kind of pull away. Didn't really, in year one under Billy Napier, It was a bad start, but you found a way to come back. You had that Anthony Richardson to Xavier Henderson touchdown. I think it brought Florida within 7 in the third quarter before Georgia just puts their foot on the gas and rolls away. Didn't happen much last year. Down 24-7 in the second quarter. Couldn't come back. So this is where we'll extend it. Going into that, it started with the Georgia game, but then you had the Arkansas game as well, and that late season skid, the last month of the season. And this is where I look at more the complementary football aspect of things. This is where I want to see the Florida offense gets better. Those first couple, the Utah, the Kentucky, Georgia, you want your defense. That's another angle I want to see for this Florida defense is get off to better starts. This is both sides of the ball, but mainly for that Florida defense too. Get off to a better start. Get your offense in a rhythm. Let your offense get in a rhythm. But that does speak for both sides of the ball. But I'm about to look at some other areas here where the defense did get off to a good start, but the offense couldn't necessarily help them out. The complementary football aspect of things. So you were down 14-0 in the first two possessions against Arkansas. That's both sides of the ball. When you look at it, that's how bad of a start that game was. Down 14-0. Arkansas, I believe, takes their first drive all the way down. They had changed offensive coordinators. 7-0 start. Then the very first play for Florida, pass it out wide to Ricky Pearsall. That ball gets stripped. Arkansas returns it back for a touchdown. It's 14-0 before you even get your drink, before you get your popcorn in the stadium, before you sit down and eat your wings. It was a noon kickoff, 14-0 by 12-10, 12-15, something like that. Unacceptable against that team, no matter what changes went on, no matter you had the black uniforms, you're supposed to be up for that game. There was no excuse, no reasoning to be down 14-0 to Arkansas. We'll get into that one more a bit too. The loss to LSU, they didn't really break away until the fourth quarter on their way to a 52-35 victory. So in that loss, it wasn't a bad start that doomed you there. More on that game in a bit, where the Florida offense couldn't survive in a track meet against an equally as bad defense in LSU. Missouri never got down big in that game. 33-31 loss, but defense gave you plenty of opportunities in the first half. We'll get into that. Didn't happen against Florida State either. You were in that game early on. You had a 12-0 lead in that game. So not all the losses followed the same script. This was where an opportunity where the defense played better. The offense could have done a little bit more to help them out. So brings up that next point. Harder, and I'll admit, it's harder to, especially that last game, Missouri and Florida State. Graham Mertz was out. Now, played most of the Missouri game. The offense, even after Graham Mertz, did some nice things with Max Brown and Trevor Etienne, but still, mainly that FSU game, hard to gauge, hard to put it all on the offense with what you were facing, but the chances were still there. And like I said, you were up 12-0 in that game. So next point is take advantage where the defense actually gives you the chance, or keep up when the other team is scoring, when their defense is just as bad as yours, like LSU. So let's go back to the Arkansas game. Florida had just tied the game at 14. You were down 14-0. You come back, tie the game. You actually got a rare interception on defense. Remember, there wasn't many of those in the season. So 14-14, just got an interception. You have all the momentum at that point. The Florida offense comes out, goes 3-and-out. Could not sustain the momentum there. And then, remember, 14-0. Part of that was an Arkansas defensive touchdown. So it wasn't the defense giving up everything here. 14-0. You tied up at 14. So there's defensive stops in this equation here. The Gator defense, after getting that interception, the Gator offense goes 3-and-out. The Gator defense gets another stop, only for the next drive to go 5 plays and a punt. So 8 total plays and 2 drives when you just tied the game at 14, had all the momentum. That eventually lets Arkansas take the lead again 17-14 a couple of drives later, taking away all the momentum Florida had. After tying the game at 14 against a bad Arkansas team, Florida would only put up a field goal in 6 straight possessions, with the longest drive only being 6 plays outside of that field goal drive. And we all remember how that game ended. Florida had plenty of opportunities after tying the game at 14. No excuse for a stretch like that against that Arkansas team. That stretch that I just mentioned, to me, is equally as bad as that 14-0 start. Given the opponent, equally as bad as that 14-0 start. 14-0 start for Arkansas. So against LSU, let's go to that game. Florida took a 28-24 lead midway through the third quarter, only to watch of course, as I said, the defense did their part here, where you put blame on them. But this should have been more of a track meet if your offense was humming. And right here, spin their tires a bit. Florida took a 28-24 lead midway through the third quarter. Defense gives up a score on their next possession for LSU. Then LSU takes the lead, of course. Then the Florida offense comes onto the field, 3 and out. And that one drive pretty much stalled all the momentum. LSU comes out, puts another touchdown up on their next drive. So the Florida offense couldn't keep up. Is it fair to put it on them? No, but at that point, you know who you're playing in LSU. And of course, I know Florida's offense wants to go out there and put up points. That's not the case here, but you just weren't able to. I mean, later on, the Florida offense turns it over on downs. You're down by 10 at that point. Florida offense just couldn't keep up. And that LSU defense was terrible. Terrible. So that was another complimentary football. You know your defense. You know your defense is not going to be able to keep up with LSU. Florida offense also couldn't keep up when you go to the other side of the ball. And I know it's not fair to expect them to be perfect, but that other offense was doing it against your bad defense. Florida need to be able to do the same against the LSU terrible defense. Nitpicking, sure, but that's what we're dealing with here in the margins of the Billy Napier era so far. That's the margins this team is dealing with. So then let's go to the Missouri game. Against the Tigers. After the first two drives for each team, the game was 7-3 in favor of Florida. You had a 7-3 lead after the first two drives of the game. Then the defense forces a punt, so Florida has the ball with an early lead, only to go 3 and out. -1 yards on 3 plays when you had a chance to put some early pressure on Missouri. We all remember how that game ended. Put up some early points. Maybe Missouri can't come back. Florida wouldn't score the rest of the first half. After scoring opening drive touchdown, wouldn't score the rest of the first half, going 3 and out again, 8 plays in a punt, 5-play interception drive, and then a 6-play drive to end the half. Couldn't do anything. There was a chance to build some early momentum, put even more pressure on Missouri, and the defense was actually playing well against a good Missouri offense. The game would end up in the 30s after a low-scoring first half, but the offense couldn't help the defense in the first half. And we all remember what that game came down to. One more score in the first half, and you may win that game. Lastly, against FSU, up 10-0. Florida has a 3 and out, then punts it away. So you're up 10-0. The offense couldn't do anything with a 3 and out, but then you get the fortune of a safety to make it 12-0. You played the field position game there. When you go 3 and out, you still get the good fortune of forcing a safety going up 12-0. All the momentum, and this one at home. LSU was on the road. Okay, so you can explain it a bit. Missouri on the road. Okay, we all know the road issues this team has had under Billy Napier. But you had momentum at one point in Death Valley. You had momentum, a defense playing well on the road in Columbia, Missouri. But this time you're at home, up 12-0 against Florida State. The Swamp is going crazy against a bad FSU offense that's struggling without Jordan Travis at quarterback. Great field position after a safety, only to call that double reverse pass. Intentional groundings called, stalls the drive. The game was never really the same after that. Florida's forced to punt at that time when you started the drive in FSU territory. Forced to punt. Florida State scores their first touchdown of the game after that punt, while Florida misses a field goal before halftime. So FSU took all that mojo into the locker room, then scores their first drive in the second half. That whole sequence really won the game for Florida State. All because Florida couldn't put them away, up 12-0. The ball in great field position. I mean, the defense picked it back up after that, but Florida could only put together one field goal on 5 drives, with the other drives going for 3 punts and a turnover on downs. So you had your chances in these losses to end the season. I mean, a lot of people talk about how close Florida was to 7-8 wins. Well, don't forget about the South Carolina game. It took a miracle to win that game at the same time. It works both ways. But if you do want to take that side of it, this is how close Florida was. And I know we like a lot of what we saw on offense last year, but there are steps to be taken. There are more opportunities to play more complementary football. And when the defense does do something good, lend them a hand. Build some momentum. Build some more pressure for the opponent. The offense is the more stable side of the ball. And while they do a lot of good things, situational football, situational play calling have to be better to take the next step. So when looking at areas of improvement for this team, get off to better starts in games. This team fights back a whole lot from behind with Billy Napier as head coach so far. And the offense needs to take advantage of when the defense gives them their chances. There wasn't many of them last year, but I just documented there were plenty of chances against Arkansas and Missouri and LSU and Florida State for the offense to help out the defense. So there's my areas of improvement right there that I want to see Florida take advantage of this year. It's going to be a lot of close games. It's going to be a lot of hopefully back and forth battles. Hopefully Florida's not playing from behind a good bit. But when your defense, if this defense is going to be improved, all these chances that I just brought up, hopefully there's even more of them. And if you want to get some upsets, the offense needs to take advantage of those chances. All right, let's switch and let's start the Twitter Q&A that will take us through fall camp for the next couple of weeks. 3 questions here. Let's start with Chomp Sports. He sent this to me on Twitter, and I like this one. I have to look ahead a bit. Have to look ahead a bit in a glass half full way. How does the outlook for the program change if the Gators can secure a college football playoff berth? How does the outlook for the program change if the Gators can secure a college football playoff berth? Yes, you heard the question right from Chomp Sports. But that's what we're doing here. Unlikely as it might be, I think that's why he's asking the question. How does the outlook change? This tough schedule. All the losses that have mounted up so far. You know, there's a lot of growth that needs to happen with this team. On the sidelines, on the field. So with this schedule, you would think it would change significantly for most people and most fans. Now, we can get in trouble with it being only one season. We've had this conversation on Gators Breakdown Plus, believe me. Yeah, but you can get in trouble with it only being one season. You don't want to put too much stock into one season, but it would at least show it can be done, which is all many want to see under Billy Napier right now. Fans, recruits want to see it. I don't know if it would save Florida's 2025 recruiting class, but it would certainly help improve it for its current state. Combine that season with an already strong start for the 2026 class. You know, if you go on to this 2024 season and you got a really good start to that 2026 class, you could certainly ride that wave where the 2026 class would get even better. So to me, that's where the ultimate outlook would come from, is a good start for the next recruiting class, because that's usually when a good season pays off. Not the recruiting class that is about to be signed, but that next recruiting class. It would pay dividends in that. So it changed the outlook a little bit, I think, from where this program is headed recruiting-wise to be even better. It would relieve a lot of built-up pressure in this program. It'd get people believing again in where this thing is headed. Not everybody would be on board after one season. I completely realize that. I know that. I don't know if I'd fully jump on board, but it would certainly speak to, hey, it can be done. And there is some hope. I think a lot of fan base just wants hope right now. So achieve that in 2024. And then you got DJ Lagway waiting in the wings. And the outlook would be really positive. It's like, you did this with a 6-year quarterback who probably is the greatest fit for your system, but Graham Mertz, Billy Napier did some good things last year in this offense. Adapted the offense. It should take some steps this year. But basically, in this scenario, it will take steps this year because Florida's going to be a college football playoff team. That means this offense went in all those things I just mentioned before this segment, went and did those things and improved in a whole lot of ways. And now you got a quarterback in DJ Lagway. We all know the accolades. would fit more in what Billy Napier wants to do, you would assume with all the weapons returning on offense, the outlook would be really positive. There'd be an incredible turnaround on defense if you make the college football playoff. Many contributors on that side of the ball returning on that side as well. And you'd expect TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins, LJ McCray, Jamari Lyons, Pup Howard, Graham and Childs at linebacker, Devin Moore, Jordan Castell, Denson, Thornton, Gates. You'd all expect them to be contributors in a 2024 college football playoff run, and they return the next season. Maybe not Devin Moore if he has a great year, but you get my point. It would build a better belief on what is happening on the defensive side of the ball as well. And you get so many of those faces returning. So putting all this together, the outlook would be really positive, I think, for most people out there. Because so many players would be returning, and maybe this thing had just gotten figured out. Extending it a little bit, now, if we look at it from a different angle, it might mean a little less overall since the college football playoff expands to 12 teams, but given Florida's schedule that a lot of people want to point at, it would mean a whole lot, even with an expanded college football playoff. It doesn't necessarily mean Florida's a top 4 team, but could sneak in with, say, a 9-3 schedule. I know there's talking of an 8-4. I think it would take complete chaos for an 8-4 Florida team to make it into a college football playoff. But let's just go 9-3, because that would be the most likely scenario. If Florida made the college football playoff, 9-3 or better would have to be the record. Now, the outlook would be even more positive if those 3 losses are close games against great teams. And in 2025, if we're looking at the outlook, those same teams are on the schedule for the most part, except UCF. I think the 2025 schedule eases up a little bit. So many teams replacing quarterbacks. Now your home away designation changes. But I think if you do this in 2024 and you look at the 2025 schedule with everybody returning, DJ Lagway at quarterback, I think the outlook would be even more positive. Now, if you want to go glass half empty and look at this, to me, it would be really hard to look that way, but it would be out there. I do caution that everything would be fine overall. I don't think recruiting is quite there to compete with the elites. Doing it this year would require excellent coaching, which would need to be replicated the following year. It won't matter much overall, but if all these wins in 2024 are close and Florida makes the college football playoff, that trend could reverse in 2025. And I think 2012, for us Gator fans, is a good example of that. A one-loss regular season from Will Muschamp, and then in 2013, you returned Jeff Driscoll at quarterback and a Will Muschamp defense. You couldn't ever recapture what happened in 2012. And I know injuries played a whole large part in that, but we know enough about Will Muschamp now that that was never going to be replicated. Doesn't matter what the rest of his tenure at Florida, what we saw at South Carolina. 2012 was an outlier. That was never going to happen again. So it's not a given that if you somewhat play over your head one year, that means the overall outlook is going to happen. Because you're going to get all the positive feels. You're going to get all the positive vibes. We had it a whole lot going from 2012 to 2013. Still had a whole lot of talent on this roster left over from Urban Meyer and what Will Muschamp had put together early on. You had a quarterback returning in 2013. Now, you lost to Miami going into that early in that season. So it wouldn't be a given. But yes, to me, the outlook could and should be great if Florida makes the college football playoff this season. Let's keep it going here. And this is going to be a deep dive. Long Way Coop on Twitter did ask, how has the depth competition increased from last year? And you know what? I think this is a good time as we're heading into fall camp. Let's quickly take a look position by position and look at the depth competition. Quarterback, we know this one's easy. Graham Mertz is the guy. It's second year for him. You're backed up by Lagway and Clay Millen. It's overall better depth compared to last season. Mertz in his second year. Lagway's going to me, still be, and I think much better in his first season than a second-year Max Brown. And Clay Millen does have experience starting at Colorado State. So as far as competition goes, probably not there much. It is Mertz's team. It is Mertz's offense. Lagway will get some run. But as far as being a competition, no, that's not there. But it is a deeper group than last year. So competition-wise, no, probably not. But overall, a much deeper group. Running back, I'd say the deepest position with the most potential. We all know Montreal Johnson is the guy, but what happens behind him? Trayon Webb likely gets first crack at running back too, but he will certainly be pushed by Jaden Ball, Katie Daniels, Jacoby Jackson, maybe, just maybe Cam Carroll. We'll see, hearing some conflicting things going on there, if he'll be back or not this year. And it could be really running back by committee or roll with a hot hand with the guys behind Johnson. So the question is there to me, running back 2, and can the explosiveness be there without Trevor Etienne? That's the questions. That's the questions of that group. But so many names. I think the group is much deeper than it was last year. So competition for that running back 2 spot is really going to make that room better. Wide receiver. You got to replace Ricky Pearsall, but the rest of the cast is back, led by Trey Wilson. You bring in impact transfers, Chimere DK, Elijah Badger, and I know most people want that to be the starting 3. I don't know if it's going to be that way when fall camp starts. I will admit, during the season, I expect it to be that way. You do have Khalil Jackson returning. He'll be in that starting group along with Wilson and DK to start camp, I believe. But then you have to think, if we go down this, we're talking about depth here, you got to think this is a make or break year for Marcus Burke. If it's ever going to happen, this got to be this year, and his name is being brought up a whole lot behind the scenes. And then there's even more depth with second years, Andy Jean, Aiden Mizell, redshirt freshman there, and then freshman Tank Hawkins, TJ Abrams coming in. TJ Abrams getting a whole lot of love. Hawkins was getting that love in the spring. This is a much deeper group, a much more competitive group compared to last year. Just based, you got the transfers coming in, the players returning like Trey Wilson, and then the players returning that didn't get much play last year that really should raise the competition level. So yeah, the depth here, more competitive than it was last year as well. Should make that group better. Now, it's hard to say Ricky Pearsall leaves and the group gets better, but you bring in Elijah Badger for that. You bring in a Chimere DK for that. And then you hope you develop some of that talent to help make up for that. But can some of that also be erased by a second-year Trey Wilson? He's going to be better than he was last year. So I think it's at least baseline as good as last year. Now, they got to get better in beating some coverages and help Graham Mertz out there. I fully admit that, but that's where I talk about the potential of that. So many guys returning, it should help. Much of the depth storyline at tight end will be the health of Keon Zipperer. Just don't know his availability at this time. I know we've seen some favorable things on social media, but we'll see what that means. If he can ever be and if he is, can he even be the same player coming back? Still think he'll be behind Arlis Boardingham for the most part, but maybe certain packages where Zipperer is out there, Boardingham's out there, if Zipperer is ready to go. And now you can insert in that group freshman Amir Jackson into the mix. So just because of that, it's deeper at that H spot, but no experience just because it's deeper. It is deeper because you get Zipperer back. Some experience there in that first year with Billy Napier. Boardingham. So you can say in some experience, but for Amir Jackson himself, no experience. So it gives you a body, but not the experience. And then at the Y spot, Hayden Hansen, that's his spot, of course, took that over from Dante Lang last year. That was a win for Florida because now Hayden Hansen should be better building off of that. Tony Livingston, Caleb Rios. Rios probably looks to redshirt at some point this year, maybe playing his 4 games, but redshirt. They round out that group. So more depth overall at tight end, but injury and experience questions do live there. The offensive line, this one's tricky too because the numbers are much better than they were, but experience is severely lacking behind that starting group. Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon probably starts at right tackle, backed up by Caden Jones, who hasn't played a snap yet. And then some reports that he may be pushing for that starting job. Damian George moving back inside to right guard. Like I said, played that shuffle at Bama a little bit from tackle and guard. He is moving inside the guard this fall, of course. Backed up by the injury-riddled Cam Waits and Bryce Lovett. Bryce Lovett was getting a whole lot of love in the spring, but he hasn't played it down. Jake Slaughter at center, backed up by Roderick Kearney and Jason Zandamela. So Slaughter, a ton of snaps, but behind him, nothing. Najee Harris at left guard, backed up by Christian Williams, Marcus Mascall. So Harris, as a true freshman last year, plenty of snaps, but behind him, not much. Left tackle will be the deepest with snap counts. Got Austin Barber, Devin Manuel playing a ton of snaps, playing a ton of SEC snaps. Now Devin Manuel at Arkansas, of course. Fletcher Westfall behind them. So you have two players who have played a lot of football. Austin Barber back healthy. How much of a competition will it be in the fall, since we're talking about competition here as well? So the competition mostly, I think, going to be behind the starting group. But as I mentioned, some of those young players, like a Caden Jones, there's some talk that he could push. Bryce Lovett could push. So you got some young guys who have gotten that moniker, could push for some starting time, playing time, but still not a lot of experience past that first group, first 6 guys there. So a good bit of starting experience for the starters, but a huge drop-off in snaps played behind that. Deeper than last season, not much experience past the starters. I do think it's a better spot than it was last season, but not by much as far as experience goes. Hopefully your competition, because of the bodies, makes a difference up front. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Let's start at edge. Let's start to go with the F spot. Much deeper group this year. Should be some great competition. At this F spot, once Justice Boone went down with the injury last fall camp, Florida had to slide out Tyreek Sapp to fill that void. Sapp will stay there. Boone comes back, giving Florida 2 starter types at the spot. Still need to find more pressure from that group, and to me, could come from the younger players. Cameron James, few snaps last year, and also true freshman LJ McCray. These guys may be more talented as far as the pass rush from this group goes. Florida feels good about this F spot. That allowed them to move Kelby Collins. He was moved away from that spot back in the springtime. Brian Taylor will also slide to defensive end now. So at the jack part of edge, let's move there. You got TJ Searcy. He played in all 12 games last season. Looks to be more of a 3-down player this year. But you have some numbers behind him, but nothing proven. George Gums, Jack Pyburn, Quincy Ivory, Jamarcus Weston. There'll be options at the position, but there is a lot to prove, even at the top with Searcy. In replacing Princely Human Mielen, his pressures, his sacks, was about the only guy who could consistently do it. Even as inconsistent as his play was, he was the only consistent pressure in the backfield. So, as we said, a 3-down player for somebody like TJ Searcy. Can he become a more consistent player as far as getting pressure on a quarterback, but also doing his assignment in the run game? Not leaving massive holes up front. But behind him, a lot of questions, and this is probably the group I question the most on the team right now. I think there's a lot to like about TJ Searcy. Gums, they love his athleticism, but taking a look there, hardly any experience. Now, defensive end, got a ton. Or if we move up here to the defensive line, we'll start at defensive end, but Caleb Banks, his second season with the program, that should help. Joey Slackman comes in as one of the top transfer defensive linemen. Now Kelby Collins is in the group. Talk about competition. I really like it in this group. This group is made up well for that. I think it has a pretty good baseline to start with. Collins will, to me, he'll insert himself a lot into the rotation, giving Florida 3 guys here that should really help each other. And I know many expected Slackman to come in the spring and take over for Banks, but Banks held him off in the spring. To me, sets up a really nice competition, a really nice battle in fall camp. And it may take some time for Collins to adjust to the role inside, but I think his talent will win out in the long run. He'll get a whole lot of snaps coming up this year. More on him later. So let's move inside along the defensive front. You got Cam Jackson, Dez Watson, Jamari Lyons, all return. And hopefully that group takes the necessary steps in creating more havoc in the middle. But man, there's a lot of competition there too. Jamari Lyons, don't be surprised to start seeing him play a ton of snaps there too. Getting faster is the focus of that group. It's a group that is deep with experience. Now Gerald Chapman steps in. He needs to get the best out of them. Let's move one level back. Now linebacker, a lot of competition there too. May not be deeper with experience, but deeper with talent. Shamar James in year 3, there's going to be an improvement there. And I think the improvement's going to be because he's got more help around him. Derek Wingo will bring a veteran presence. If he can stay healthy, I do think he can be a contributor. He's just played hurt so much the last couple of years. But the overall talent of Pup Howard, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, the new faces in that group will eventually win out. I don't want to overlook Jaden Robinson and RJ Moten either, but the group will reach a higher ceiling with the new faces also contributing. A lot of competition in new faces in that group. I mean, Moten's a new face in that group as well since he's switching positions. So a lot more competition in that group, a lot more true linebackers in that group really help. Really help. Let's go to corner. Starting roles are solidified with Marshall and Moore, but behind them, more, I think, great battles. Jakeem Jackson, Dijon Johnson, Jameer Grimsley, Cormani McClain, all highly rated recruits at the cornerback spot. A lot of high-level talent there. And while Jackson and Johnson could be the starting duo next season, who's going to push for snaps at that third cornerback spot this season? Great battle to have heading into camp. And let's not forget, one of those guys could be counted on even more if Moore can't stay healthy. If Devin Moore can't stay healthy, this may be a spot, this may be a battle for cornerback too, opposite Jason Marshall. Or if he gets hurt too. There's a lot of depth here, a great position to be in with 2 guaranteed starters and some great battles behind those guys. One position where Florida has much more proven depth, much more competition than last season, is safety. Jordan Castell in his second year, many snaps in this defense. Asa Turner joins him as the probable starters in the backfield. A lot of snaps played at Washington for him. Can he stay healthy as well? And then depth and competition with DJ Douglas impressing in the spring. Triquez Bridges coming through the portal. Bryce Thornton, of course, who played a lot of snaps last season, adds even more experience to this defense. And in this defense, a lot of competition in that group. I think that should help shore up the bad safety play we saw at times last year. Ooh. Thought I had a sneeze there. All right, so here we go. Overall, there aren't many surprises on this team regarding position battles, I don't think. Just went through, there are some battles, I don't think there's going to be any huge surprises out of it. And that can be a good thing. You know, with so many young players getting experience in their first years last season, Florida now has much more depth than before. And you can see where the depth is creating competition. Running back 2, receivers 4 through 8, backups along the offensive line. Depth will go a long way in the rotation and competition along the defensive front. Young faces at linebacker, backup cornerbacks, and safeties have a ton of bodies for competition. Competition should make this team better. I do think this is a team with more talent on this team to compete this season. Can the coaching get them there? But I do think there is more. This team, I think if you line them up against last year's team, they should win that ball game. As we're thinking outside the box here. Match up 2024 Florida against 2023 Florida. This team should win that game because of more bodies, more experienced bodies, all that relating to competition. So, yeah, I really do. I really do think there's more depth, more competition that should lend itself to a better team. How many wins does that equal? Hard to know. Hard to know. So what you guys think? Do you agree that Florida is a deeper team this season? What am I missing here? Am I overlooking something? Are there more questions in the position group that I didn't hit on that you guys have? Let me know. All right, last question here. Tyler, UFan92 on Twitter. This is a fun one. Who do you see as a breakout player on offense and defense? So one on each side of the ball here. On offense, I'm going to go Chimere Dike. His relationship with Graham Mertz, that's going to pay off. New strength and conditioning program is working for him as he continues to set personal best. I'm hearing he's going to play a lot in the slot where he can take advantage. This will allow Florida to move Trey around a bit more too. All I've heard about lately with him is just how much faster he is now to when he got here. And that's about Chimere Dike. And I know Graham Mertz is looking forward to pairing up with him. I think that goes a long way. Their history together 2 seasons ago, putting up pretty good numbers as a pair in a bad season at Wisconsin. I think he's a guy who just fits right into what Billy Napier's looking for, Billy Gonzalez is looking for at wide receiver, and just really gives a presence to Graham Mertz that he can count on. Now, I know there's some personal conversations I know people who've had with Graham Mertz. Big fan. He is a big fan of Chimere Dike being in his wide receiver room. Honorable mention. I'm going to go honorable mention here as well. I really wanted to go with an offensive lineman, but that to me is hard to do so right now. I would love for that to be Crenshaw Dixon or Caden Jones at right tackle. I don't know if I can go that far yet. I would love to say, you know what? Remember Billy Napier's first season, and Austin Barber could have been that breakout player when it was all said and done that year. So I would have loved if I could feel the confidence of going back to that spot again. But I don't know, as far as honorable mention goes, how I could put that person above Jaden Ball at running back. And I know he's probably one of the easiest ones. He's probably going to be the one that's picked the most. Now I'm putting him as honorable mention here. But all we got to do is just go back and watch the spring game, and let's see if that's what we get. If so, he's going to be that guy. And I do think there is going to be a running back that will break out, and hopefully more than one. But it's certainly in the cards that one of Florida's breakout players is going to be a running back too. I mean, let's hope there's more than one breakout player for this offense. They're going to take these next steps. But certainly, I think most people will probably go running back. I'm going to go Chimere Dike just because I do think the passing game opens up a bit more this season. They'll rely on Graham Mertz a little more this season. I think Chimere Dike is going to be a big, huge beneficiary of that. On defense, I'll give you a few seconds of letting you guess where I'm going on that one. I think most of you guys know. 3, 2, 1, Pup Howard. You know, if you know me, you know that's where I'm going. And speaking of the spring game without Jaden Ball, speak of the spring game with Pup Howard. And I know you don't want to take too much from that. We see all the time the spring game heroes that never translate to a real football game. But I do think that was a preview of what we were going to get from Pup Howard. Came right in this spring, and he had to because of injuries at the position, but he took off, showing great understanding of the defense, being able to communicate, and just having to play with an instinctual physical presence that's been missing at this spot besides Shamar James. There's not much to point to at South Carolina. I know that, but that's why you pick out breakout players, right? You can't point to what they've done to really much before, but what they're about to do. He played in 11 games for the Gamecocks as a true freshman. Finished the season, 19 tackles, 10 of them solo, tackle for loss, forced fumble. But that's what a breakout is, though, right? Can't point to much before. I do see Pup Howard being my guy on defense that's going to break out. Honorable mention on this side of the ball, I told you we'd come back to him. I'm going Kelby Collins up front. His switch from edge to defensive end. He did struggle at first with the move in spring, had to get used to more physical play, more double teams, but I do think his talent is too good, and he'll break out this season. May not be right away, as he needs to have more experience in this role, this new role, but I see that talent take it over eventually. One more, as I said, if you go on the offensive, I almost went offensive line for another breakout on offense. TJ Searcy probably would be my next honorable mention player because he's going to get all the opportunity to be that pass rusher Florida's looking for at that jack spot. So there we go. That gave you a good look at the Q&A that we'll be doing over the next few weeks, and also talking about some of the areas I want to see this Gator team improve. Both sides of the ball getting off to some better starts, and the offense helping out the defense on some complementary football. Hopefully that happens in this 2025 season. So that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. Fall camp starting this week, and you know how we do it then. It's just pure football mode. More episodes, more coverage. We got one more vacation to kick in. Maybe there's a commitment. Hopefully there's a commitment that will happen. We know how those things go. But when I get back, it is full slam football season mode. Football season mode. That's what we live for right here, right? On Gators Breakdown. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.